When we think of Albert Einstein, we usually picture the genius physicist with the wild hair, the intense stare, and the chalkboard full of equations. A man who seemed to operate on a different wavelength than the rest of us. A scientist. A logician. A thinker grounded in mathematics and reason. But what if I told you that beneath that scientific surface, there was something else? Something deeper, more personal. Something spiritual. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's not science fiction. This is a story about a man, a real man, who, despite revolutionizing modern physics, quietly held on to questions that science couldn't answer. This is a story I want to share with you, not because it gives easy answers, but because it reminds us that even the greatest minds among us struggled with the same timeless mystery. Were we created by something greater? I didn't set out to uncover anything extraordinary. Like most people, I admired Einstein from a distance. I knew the headlines: relativity equals mc squared, Nobel Prize. But as I read more, I noticed something strange. There were glimpses of a different Einstein. One who, behind closed doors, seemed to wrestle with the idea that life, the universe, reality itself, might be more than just particles and probability. It started with journals, letters, writings he never intended for the public. There, I began to see a pattern. This wasn't a man purely obsessed with logic. He was curious in another way, a spiritual way. He often talked about the mystery, the wonder, the harmony of natural laws. He wasn't trying to define God. He was trying to understand if there was something, some force, that put all this into motion. I remember sitting late one night, reading one of his lesser-known personal letters. It wasn't dramatic. No grand confessions. But there was a line about how he couldn't believe that everything in the universe was just random chance. It wasn't even about religion. He wasn't promoting faith. But he was asking. And to me, that's the key. Einstein's story isn't about answers. It's about questions. And the fact that someone like him, someone who built entire scientific paradigms, could still sit back and wonder whether a higher power was behind it all, that shook me. And that's what made me dig deeper. In his later years, Einstein became more introspective. He distanced himself from politics, from fame, from lectures. He walked, he wrote, he thought. There are pages and pages of notes from that time that never made it to the public. Some were scribbled in German, never translated. Others were left incomplete. But when you read them, a picture starts to emerge. There was something on his mind. Something big. He kept circling back to the same idea, that the universe had a structure too elegant to be random. He would write about symmetry, about mathematical perfection, and then suddenly about spirit, about intelligence behind existence, and even about the soul of the cosmos. These weren't scientific terms. These were words from a man trying to reconcile what he felt with what he knew. And that's what makes this story real. Because Einstein wasn't trying to convince anyone. He wasn't preaching. He was just trying to make sense of the same thing that we all feel, at least once in our lives. That quiet voice inside us that says, there has to be more. Here's a man who understood the mechanics of space-time better than anyone in history. And yet, he never claimed to fully understand why it all existed. In fact, he admitted that the more he learned, the more mysterious it all became. The deeper he went into science, the more he felt that something, or someone, had to have set it all into motion. He once talked about cosmic harmony. That everything in the universe moves together like a symphony. And while science can analyze the notes and instruments, it can't explain the composer. That's the line he walked. A line between understanding the universe and feeling that maybe, just maybe, it was created. It's easy to forget that Einstein was once a child. A kid lying under the stars, staring into the vastness of space, wondering what was out there. That child never fully left him. That awe, that wonder, it followed him to the end. And while he never said it outright, many believe he died still holding on to the possibility that the universe wasn't just born out of chaos, but out of intention. What truly deepened my understanding of Einstein's inner world was not just what he wrote, it was how he lived. As I read more, watched archival footage, and listened to interviews with those who knew him, I realized something profound. Einstein's entire life was a quiet pursuit of something greater. Not glory, not recognition, but meaning. He rejected wealth. He rejected power. He lived modestly, wore the same clothes for days, walked alone for hours. Not because he was eccentric, but because he was listening, not to the noise of the world, but to something much quieter inside himself. You could see it in his habits. The way he would pause mid-sentence, looking out the window for long stretches. The way he loved silence. The way he seemed to treat thinking as a sacred act, not just intellectual, but almost meditative. What was he hearing in those moments? What patterns, what questions, what sense of purpose? Was it the pulse of the universe? Was it a whisper from something greater, something he didn't dare name? His assistants, his friends, even his housekeeper once said that Einstein spoke about the cosmos like a person talks about someone they love. That stuck with me, because that kind of language doesn't come from formulas. It comes from feeling. There was a warmth in the way he approached truth. Not cold logic, not arrogance. Something more human, more humble. And that humility, I believe, came from his awareness that no matter how much he learned, the real answers, the ultimate answers, might forever remain beyond reach. There's something incredibly powerful in that idea. That the smartest man of the 20th century could admit he didn't have all the answers. That he was still searching. Still wondering. Still open. One of the moments that stayed with me the most was an interview Einstein gave not long before his death. It wasn't televised, not widely published. But the transcript exists. In it, he was asked if he believed in God. He smiled, hesitated, and then said something that gives me chills to this day. He said, "I believe in the God of harmony." That's all. No definitions. No doctrine. Just harmony. It says everything and nothing at the same time. It's a scientist's answer, sure. But it's also the answer of a poet. A mystic. Someone who feels there's something out there. Not a man in the sky, but a force, a logic, a presence that guides without speaking. And that brings us here. To us. To now. Because the question isn't just what Einstein believed. The question is, what do we believe? In a world so full of noise, doubt, and distraction, are we still willing to ask the hard questions? Are we still brave enough to admit we don't have all the answers? And are we still willing, like Einstein, to walk that fine line between science and spirit? Maybe that's where truth lives. Not in certainty, but in wonder. Einstein didn't find the answers. But he showed us how to look for them. Quietly. Honestly. Humbly. And for that, I think he gave us something more valuable than any equation. He gave us permission to believe, not blindly, not foolishly, but thoughtfully. Deeply. Curiously. Because the question isn't just what Einstein believed. The question is, what do we believe? In a world so full of noise, doubt, and distraction, are we still willing to ask the hard questions? Are we still brave enough to admit we don't have all the answers? And are we still willing, like Einstein, to walk that fine line between science and spirit? Maybe that's where truth lives. Not in certainty, but in wonder. Einstein didn't find the answers. But he showed us how to look for them. Quietly. Honestly. Humbly. And for that, I think he gave us something more valuable than any equation. He gave us permission to believe, not blindly, not foolishly, but thoughtfully. Deeply. Curiously. Because sometimes the smartest thing a person can do is admit they don't know. And maybe, just maybe, that's when the real answers begin.